Hello. I'm doing fine. How are you? Oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that you lost your mom. You know, I did too, and my father actually.
Well, I'm
But
sorry to hear that you lost your mom.
that's mine. Sorry about that. Yep. So, anyways, yeah, it's hard, but it also kind of like shows us what's important in life. I see that I see that John Doe and Scrappy have joined us. Hello, guys. Thank you. Did it? I can hear you. I can. John, Scrappy, can you hear us? I don't know. Do you have a level kind of low? It says you are. It says you are both cutting out badly. Yeah, but you all keep buffering. I don't. I don't. I don't see buffering on my end though. Daryl says he's having major audio issues. He can only hear one of us. Okay. Well, let's entertain. How you doing, guys? How was your Saturday so far? Hope it was okay. You and your Windows updates. I wish you would just switch back to Windows 7. I'm a very happy camper with 7.
Oh, this is gonna kill everybody. This is gonna kill me first. Do you hear an echo data?
No.
Okay, everybody in the audience, can you hear me all right? I apologize. We hate Windows, and I'll tell you why. Cuz
Speak for yourself.
this this update is going to take a while. Okay, so I'll just shut it down and let it update on the shutdown.
Wait a second. You mean you have a Windows update now?
I had one last night right before the show, and its comment was, "This will take a while." So this morning, I shut my computer down to do the update. And
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
and when I shut my computer down, it took like 45 minutes. So I thought, okay, yeah, that was a while. Good thing I didn't do that last night. But when I started it back up an hour later, it took almost 2 hours to finish the download and install and everything, between running it and then logging in and then letting it finish all this junk once I logged in. And then I had to go back through and undo everything it did pretty much. All my audio settings for all of the programs were reset. My main settings changed.
Okay.
It's just,
You're rambling.
I'm
Okay,
rambling.
you're rambling. Okay, I understand. You're upset. Okay, now how are my audio settings, John? Are they better? I just cranked them up a little bit.
All right. It looks like we need to say hello. I am the Numbskull, the guy on the right lower corner of your screen, and with me tonight is that fine hand to my right, to your left, the Data
Yeah.
Wasteland.
Hello.
I think we sound different enough. We shouldn't have to go over that too many times, right? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Numb is quiet.
exactly.
Numb is quiet. This is how I talk.
Now
I'm
numb
quiet.
is quiet. Here we go. Now it's numb that's quiet. Okay.
I can
Well,
do this, but I don't want to.
yeah, I don't want you to either.
I don't like.
Okay, let's
Let's
get
get
back
into
to
our topic. What is our fine
yeah,
topic?
our fine topic today is 9/11. 9/11 is, September 11th, 2001. It was a grave day in history, but it was also a day that a lot of things changed and a lot of things happened, and it's also a monumental day. It's it's so big, and it involves so much, and covers so many different topics or subtopics that it's really hard to even wrap your head around.
Okay. And we kind of tried to outline an idea of where we wanted to direct the show because of the problem with so many things to talk about. We're going to acknowledge a few things and then move around them. So, there's.
Daryl says 9/11 never happened. John says I don't remember masturbating on that day, and Scrappy says 11th September 2001 saw a lot of things written about that. So yeah, I mean, frankly, a lot of people that you deal with every single day, they weren't even born yet. Then a lot of people were also very young kids, so they really weren't clued into what the hell was going on. And I'm kind of afraid that people are just going to either forget or just accept the narrative as fact. So that's why we're kind of talking about it now.
No, I wouldn't consider you a conspiracy theorist. You just know a lot about the things that happen. And when there's something that just doesn't sound right, you want to see facts and statistics to prove it. And then when they look like
Well,
they're not right, you start to wonder what really happened.
it's funny you should say those two words, conspiracy theorist, because that even those two words have changed in the past since 9/11. Before, conspiracy theory was just somebody talking about a possible criminal group doing something, but it's been changed. That definition has been changed to mean somebody who's sort of crazy and sort of says things that are kind of out of his mind. So even in that
Sometimes,
aspect,
to some people, it's hard to tell the difference.
Well, I can understand that because if you go all the way back, even all the way back to Nazi Germany, there was a quote. They said, if you're going to lie, make it an outrageous lie. If you repeat it enough times, the lie becomes the truth. And I'm afraid that that's really what's been happening lately.
I wouldn't at all doubt it. And we were looking and skimming across facts earlier to try and decide how to talk about this. And I can say I'm about Daryl Odell's age. I was a senior in high school when this all happened, and we watched it live on TV from like 10 minutes after the news went live with the footage. We were watching it, and that's all we did that day. And I was in a design class, and we studied watched videos on how the design was done, how the construction was done, how the cleanup was being done, and how it fell, and the analysis, the pre-analysis that was coming out afterwards, and to sit here more than a decade later and look through all well no not yeah more than a decade later to sift through some of these new facts that I never heard about because they were tossed out there, but they weren't mainstream media. So I didn't hear about it at the time. At 17 or 18, yeah, I had YouTube. I posted some games on it here and there, but I didn't. I watched the news. I read the paper. You get what's fed to you. So you don't hear about some of these things. And we're going to try and go over some of them and see what people want to talk about, see what people don't, but we're going to try and at least cover some of these things that sound really interesting. And
Well,
go ahead.
when it comes to the construction of the two main towers, 1 and 2, I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, but in actuality, those two towers were 3 buildings apiece.
Yep.
Pardon?
Yep.
They basically, you had 3 separate buildings with a lobby at the floor and 2 sky lobbies, and the bottom building was built 3 times as strong as the top building to be able to support the 2 buildings above, or the 1 building above. So the way the thing fell, in just looking at it, doesn't make sense. I mean, you have asymmetrical damage and a building coming down symmetrically. Not only that, but you have only the top part of the building that is weakened and supposedly heated and melting, and you had the bottom, which was still perfectly sound. So how you could have a smaller section of the top drill through a perfectly fine lower section, which was twice as large, and completely disappear, just boggles the mind. When you look at it, it just doesn't make sense. It's almost as if a little 9-year-old, 10-year-old girl jumps into the arms of a linebacker, and the linebacker gets nailed into the ground up to his shoulders.
Yeah. And the the phenomenon that they used to explain how the building came down in the measurement it did, I was skimming across some other stuff. It's called pancaking.
Well,
And
that was their first attempt to explain it, the pancaking.
that was
But
also the explanation for the huge dust cloud that came out. Is the pancaking forced the compression of air, which caused dust and debris to keep flying out as every layer fell.
they had a cute little cartoon showing the floors collapsing on each other and then the floors building up. The one thing they never accounted for was the central core columns. See, in that pancaking, we're actually talking about a donut of floors, and we're talking about, or a squared donut of floors, and we're talking about a central core that was as strong as the entire outer rim section. We're talking about beams that were 4-inch thick steel. 4 inch. I don't know if you guys ever saw 4-inch thick steel is thicker than tanks have. And they try to be bulletproof or shell proof. So for the entire central core to basically magically evaporate, that also doesn't make sense.
All right, we're missing a bit in the chat. Director Arcter had a good one. Where did it go? 9/11, the Pentagon explosion in the plane that didn't make it out was one more troubling thing I recall. There were, was it 4 crashes or 3 total crashes that day? There was
Plane
the field, the
crashes?
Pentagon, and the 2 towers, right?
Right.
So there was 4.
Yes.
Okay. I that one's a little fuzzy. You don't always think about that. There was one into each tower. There was the Pentagon, and there was one. I think it was a field in Pennsylvania. It crashed in a field. I guess that was the one people tried to take over. They realized what was going on at that point, and they just
Understand something. This was the first time and still probably the only time that 4 planes have come down, leaving no relative plane debris, leaving I think it was only one a recorder was found, which is also kind of like insanity. And even in New York City, even with the 2 twin towers, the engine that was found on the street did not come from those 2 planes. So, what the hell is going on?
yeah. Um, you don't like my audio? Am I crackly, fuzzy? I think I sound good. I love you anyway. Thanks for being here, John. Um, I was going somewhere with the dust. I didn't realize there was this called the dustification, and um,
Oh, yeah, that's Judy Wood's theory, which is an interesting theory. I got to tell you, if you listen to it and you see some of her evidence, it's a head scratcher.
I'm curious though, and here's my thought when I was looking at this. Is this a little better, John? I'll get closer to my mic without eating it. Um, Looking at it, I kind of understand if you've ever worked with concrete and you were pulling out a sidewalk, 6 or 8 inch thick sidewalk. When you start hitting it with that jackhammer, the first thing that rises is the dust. It just kind of semi crumbles. Also, supposedly, around the inside of the interior core of the structure of the building, there was supposed to be a spray on foam texture. As well as you have to understand, inside the buildings, there was drywall and other such materials that are just going to crumble into dust. So I kind of understand a bit of dustification. But then to presume that the debris including the plane, for the buildings doesn't add up to the debris that should have been on the ground.
The reason, angry Amish hitman, just his question is this: why, after 17 years, are we still talking about this? And my only answer is the narrative is untrue. We were sold a bill of goods. We went to war in Afghanistan and in Iraq because of it. A lot of money changed hands during this time. We still don't know the truth. And until we know the truth, until we know who is responsible, I think it's important that we continue to talk about it. We continue to bring it up. We continue to push it.
Comes down to one word: doubt. If doubt lays in it, it's going to be a topic of conversation. There's doubt in the fact that there's a God. That's why people talk about the how there is or isn't, or how we can decipher whether there is or isn't. There's doubt that the world is round. That's why some people talk and try to create things to say the earth is flat. There's doubt. Doubt creates the conversation.
there's so many damn coincidences during this day. And there's also so many strange things. I mean, you have NIST. NIST is responsible for figuring out what happened and making sure it doesn't happen again. And in their grand wisdom, they're now going to keep the computer simulation of Tower 7 a national secret. Why? What reason? First of all, these buildings came down, and unless we know why they came down, can't all other buildings come down? I mean, isn't it the point of engineering to learn from our mistakes? I mean, do we build buildings that fall? I mean, ever since 9/11, a steel structure building hasn't fallen. And before 9/11, a steel structure building hasn't fallen. So what the hell is going on?
And I've also done minor looking. If you look at other buildings that have been hit by planes of comparable sizes, the damage to those buildings versus the Twin Towers isn't equal. A plane will take a good chunk out of a building. It'll do a good amount of damage. But
Hunley says that is a very concise point of view. When it boils down to it, a major lie was told. And you're absolutely right, Hunley.
but
A
the hard
major
part
lie.
is telling what
And
part
the
of it is the
crazy
lie.
thing is, the crazy thing is there were two people that lied to us and said, I mean, hell, as the buildings were burning, we had people on the news that were supposed to be in meetings in those buildings that were sitting on the news telling us it was Osama bin Laden that did this. It was our president and our vice president who said it was Osama bin Laden that did this. And now today we have them on video saying, "Oh, I never said that. We never said that." What the hell?
USA Today.
Numb?
Click here for structural design. I'm debating whether to click something to see the structural design, but I'm gonna not tempt myself. I did see the debris, and I didn't hear about the add up or anything, but this dustification and the debris goes into something else we were talking about, which, as you start to explain it, my mind immediately goes to that's a conspiracy theory. That's bullshit. And then you keep going, and it's like, well, I did hear a technology that does that. And then you keep going, and it's like, well, really? So, sonic emissions. The government works with these where you can put out sonic emissions and not sonar, but it's a device that
Microwave.
puts out sound or microwave. There's multiple devices, but the one I saw was sound. It's a sound you don't hear, but when it hits a person, it boils the skin, or it's a frequency you don't hear, but it kind of boils the surface of your skin.
A subcategory of energy weapons.
Yeah. And you have to know, this stuff is stuff the government's showing off at this point. I'm going to talk right here. How's that? This is stuff the government is showing off at this point, and we all know that it's out there, and we assuming the knowingness to us that there is more that we don't know about. So, start explaining this, and I'll try not to cut you off too much as I had my thoughts on it.
Well, as far as I know, Judy Wood is a materials engineer. She studies, materials, what they do, how they burn, how they break, how they stretch, whatever. She looked at this in a totally different way. She went, since she wasn't there at the time, all she had to work with was data like pictures, video, seismographs, even down to Earth's magnetic field. And she studied these pictures, and she found really some odd anomalies, situations where it looks like fire, but it isn't fire. Situations where you have an entire aluminum engine literally melt to a puddle. You have door handles melt out of cars, and yet you have the the paint still good, or you have half a car completely melted and the other half is pristine, or you have a car filled with papers, everything burnt but the papers. Um, we're talking about mail trucks that literally melted into a puddle, flipped over, flew. Um, she
Ooh,
also thinks she
yeah.
also
Liberal
what?
gets the bullet too brought up a point I kind of skimmed over. The kind of fireproofing those columns have mean the irons could have not all melted at the same time, and if some were intact and others failed, you'd never get a vertical collapse.
Well,
There was a manufactured story which I kind of partially believe on that, and that was the age of the insulation, the fire retardant insulation that was sprayed onto those pipes. They said from the concussive force of the impact reverberated the steel in the building and shook loose a majority of that fireproofing.
yes,
Mildly
but
believable. Mildly.
yes, but we're talking about very thick steel. I don't know if you've ever dealt with very thick steel, but steel also radiates. So, in other words, you have to have a lot of heat for a very long time. And even then, as that heat moves away from the fire, the steel cools. You had people standing in the openings before the collapse. So, how hot could the steel have been?
That's a pretty
Second,
damn good point.
secondly, you know, melting is one thing, getting a little weaker is one thing, but being cut like a knife, that's a totally different thing. And I know this has been repeated a million times. Jet fuel burns at about 600 to 800 degrees. Steel 4 inches thick needs 2,000 degrees to be able to be bent and cut the way it was. There is no way that the fuel of those planes took those buildings down. Did you know that the World Trade Center had a fire in it before they came down? This fire lasted 8 hours. It encompassed multiple floors. It was hot as hell. It They never even thought that it would be pulled down. I mean, the reason the firemen ran into that building was because till that day, a building would never come down because of fire. I mean, it's that simple.
Let's add on to that not only that, but there an explosion to the support columns just 7 or 8 years before 9/11.
Oh, we're talking about the first we're talking about the first World Trade Center bombing,
Yeah.
which, okay, you want to talk about shadiness? The FBI knew the little cabal that was going to do it. The FBI had turned the bomb maker. So, in other words, the bomb maker himself was working for the FBI. The FBI supplied the bomb maker with the explosive ordnance. The bomb maker asked the FBI, "Are you kidding? Why are you supplying me with real explosives?" They said, "Go ahead and build the bomb."
Hmm. Not that I wanted to
Afterwards,
divert. I was just saying that building's been through some major shit in its life.
that was 9/11 V1. And what they got out of it was it wasn't bad enough. There wasn't enough death and destruction. So they had a decade to prepare again.
Hmm. So,
That,
along with all this, we all know that the death toll was the death toll was something we don't even want to speak of how many people were lost in the building. Whether it intentionally came down by a manufactured collapse or it did. If it did happen to fall because of the situation that happened, if all these coincidences lined up and it just happened to have been falling, all of these deaths, we have to acknowledge we lost a lot of people. But
Look, you've got a situation where we're supposed to believe some guy in a cave is directing a dozen, supposedly such religious influenced people that they're willing to commit suicide for the cause, and yet they're playing around with drugs and strippers and whatnot, and at the same time the exact day they do this is the day that we have 10 military war games, half of them dealing with planes being hijacked and flown into buildings. And then you have a president saying the reason 9/11 happened was because it was a failure of imagination. I mean, how could we even think of a situation where people were flying planes into buildings? Well, shit, you were having war games about that. So, who's informing him?
liberals get the bullet too. The one who really gets me is the reporter showing up to a crash site, seeing nothing but a crater, getting ushered off scene and coming back an hour later to burning debris. I do remember reporters not being allowed on the scene of a lot of things. I do also remember in the city, it seemed a little odd now that I recall, and this is weird, I'm recalling it because of mention only, but the footage from 9/11 of the reporters, they were a good 15, 20 blocks back from that building. That's way more than crowd control, even for a large issue. Crowd control would be 3, maybe 5 blocks.
Two things. John, yeah, you do know that Al Qaeda is actually the base, the database. In other words, Al Qaeda was the CIA name for guns for hire. That was basically CIA's go-to guys, and even liberals get a bullet. The one thing interesting about that quote hole, if you've ever looked at the hole in Pennsylvania, it shows you a hole and it shows you a slash on either side. Now, when I first saw that, it looked to me like those were the imprints of the wings. But you know what's kind of crazy about this? I saw a picture before the hole. That slash was there before the hole. So that slash wasn't made by the wings at all, which is kind of an interesting side note. But go ahead.
Yeah,
No.
it's really weird how when you this is what it is we're talking about it. We're going to talk about facts and trying to pull things up on the side as we go. Sometimes I can't pull it fast enough and I just can't. We'll try it later. But it's funny how when you think back at the time and remember what you know and input a little more information, input a diagram, input statistics and melting temperatures and scenarios and things that were happening around the situation that you weren't told about, and all of a sudden certain things fit together. It's like, they were 15 blocks away from the World Trade Center, but the average cordon zone is 3 to 5 blocks for a large fire or something. So why did they have the staging area 15 blocks away?
Why did they get the hell out of Tower 7 when the emergency management office was in it? What did
Mm-hmm.
they know early in the morning that they had to evacuate Building 7? How in the hell did the BBC know Building 7 collapsed when Building 7 was clearly visible over the shoulder of the reporter reporting that fact? Um, there's so much insanity. There were so many people since that were witnesses that have died. We let the people that responded and dug through this mess, we let them sit there without any respirators. They're all dying in the hospital right now. The EPA knew full well that the air was poison, did nothing about it, said nothing about it. And even today, we have a Congress that will not give these people full medical. It's disgusting.
Yeah, we are kind of all over the place. I have some notes we're trying to kind of mildly stick to, but let's put it this
It's
way. If
it's
we
hard
had
not.
started from the beginning of where I originally did a 9/11 stream and started looking at weird, let's get all over the place kind of shit, there's several different government organizations that all had reasons, means, opportunity, and management to be responsible for an attack on their own country. And yet, the best way to look at it is it interweaved between a couple of separate agencies seeming to work together. We're not even covering that confusing aspect of it, or why different buildings had to be hit or sections of buildings had to be taken out. Like why a certain section of the Pentagon that was under review for a $21 million contract or something, why that section was completely destroyed during an investigation and all files were lost. We could go all over the place with this. There's so many places to go. I have a kind of a list just barely off a screen from what you guys can see. Going down through the different
I mean,
things that happened that we haven't quite talked about, that you didn't hear about in mainstream media, that wasn't in the papers.
I
Stuff that
mean,
people don't know about.
for me, the glaring. I mean, I was watching it obviously like a lot of other people that day, and I saw the news footage of the Pentagon, the very first news footage before the walls collapsed, when it showed that small hole. And I'm like, a wide body 767 didn't go through that hole. And if it went through that hole, it would have busted up all the windows on either side of that hole. And if it busted up, and even if it didn't, it would have left the goddamn wings on the lawn. So, what the hell is going on here? What are they telling us? This is bullshit.
Also, who knows anything? This is from the list. These are odd things. When you're in a large building and a fire alarm or an incident happens, the doors are all supposed to be free and clear, and opening or tampering with one of those doors sets an alarm off. Well, how often are those emergency fire doors locked and inaccessible? Because for some reason, out of nowhere on that day, doors were locked that weren't previously locked. People couldn't get through the stairwells. People couldn't get out. It's just another little thing to throw in there. You don't hear about that because once the building is destroyed, what do you think about the doors being locked? It doesn't matter. The building's gone now. Yeah, it's
You
illegal
know,
to lock a fire door.
Scrappy. You want to hear an odd sideways thing? Did you know on that day there was like a Category 3 hurricane headed straight for New York City, and it was a day out, and nobody, and I mean nobody, not a single news station had said anything about it. And luckily and weirdly, it did a U-turn and headed back out to the ocean. I mean, just odd things.
Oh, let's see. Another point we talked about here that I have in the notes is, and I'll add to this because we kind of discussed around it. There wasn't the whole building being used. It was only half rented and occupied, and in some of those and much of the other parts of the building were storage. There was literally walls of boxes stacked through areas of the building. And you had mentioned to me earlier that it was mentioned that some of the labels on these boxes had been traced back to possibly storing blasting caps in sections of the building. And I don't know if people know this, but a lot of what was rented or being occupied was government spaces. Not all, but a good deal of government agencies had locations in the World Trade Center.
They had agencies, they had subcontractors too. I mean, there was a lot of subcontractors, some subcontractors that were involved with nanothermite, some subcontractors that were involved with the intelligence industry. You had the buildings themselves were less than half full. You had squatters living there. They were called Israeli artists. They lived there on a floor. They literally took a window out, built a balcony outside the window, and then pick people up from the street who wanted a picture on the outside of the Twin Towers, brought them up to their floor, and literally rented a helicopter and took pictures of these people out on a balcony outside the building. Very odd. Very
Why?
strange.
Why would that at all be important? It's just
Well,
it is
a lot
just
of
an
people
odd
are
fact, right?
a lot of people say, well, you've got a 110-story building. How the hell are you going to wire it all for demolition in just a few hours? Well, what if you had a crew living there 24/7 for months beforehand? What if you had another crew delivering supplies to this first crew?
And
So, I
again,
mean,
I want to
it's very.
say it sounds a little like a conspiracy theory, but we're just we're picking out truths of the situation and bringing them to light. And yeah, they're out of order. Yeah, they're a little messed up.
It's
It
hard. It's hard not. It is hard not to get lost because there is so much. I think that's why people would rather just throw their hands up and accept the narrative, because once you start down this path, you could spend months, months watching it all.
Yeah, just data's video collection, which is slowly being removed by YouTube apparently, um, is hours and hours long. I've only been through a small portion of it myself, not to mention my own research and what I've found. And I've got seismic activity charts and what was it that I had? Tell me I didn't close it. I might have. I have popular mechanics over here, and I have the seismic activity from the buildings hitting and from them falling, which just being an unintelligent person reading a seismograph, that doesn't look right. Doesn't it look like there was barely more concussion when the buildings came down than there was when the plane hit them? Maybe I'm an idiot. I am a numbskull. I did self-name myself. It is both truth and antithetical. We'll put it there, but I can read numbers. It's hard to say that I
I'm,
believe a plane hitting the top of a building has the same force on the ground 30 miles away as the building hitting the ground.
Hunley, you're right. It can drive you insane. I don't know if maybe that's the point. You know, back in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have as much internet as we do now. I don't think the people that planned this had any clue where the internet would be today. I don't think they knew that, they could be possibly held accountable by enough people taking the time. I just personally don't want to see this turn into a funny joke, a meme. You know, 7-Eleven was a part-time job. You know, that if that happens, it'll be really a sad, sad day.
What are
If
you
this all turns
remembering,
into
if not what happened?
if this turns into like some sort of joke that nobody, we know now that false flags are standard operating procedure when it comes to taking a country to war. And it's happened over and over and over again. We know that our country, the United States, has experimented on population, has radiated them, has doused them in chemicals, you know, has experimented on them mentally. It needs to be brought out. I mean, I personally love this country, and I really have a much higher uh, want for this country to be. I mean, maybe it's naive, but I really truly hope that one day we could get to the bottom of this and clean, you know, hey, drain the swamp as you say. I mean, I think a lot of people are sick and tired, and I think one of the reasons Trump won was because he was an outsider. He was going to see something and in his business acumen say, that's messed up. That has to change. I hope to God he does. I hope to God we all don't give up.
John
Do you,
Doe.
you know, John
Doe.
Ooh,
Ooh,
is that me?
is that me?
what?
Yeah, I think that's me.
Yeah, I think that's me.
I'm coming through on your
Coming
end.
through on your end.
Ooh.
Ooh.
All right. Well, I'll
Well,
talk.
I mean,
All right, well, I'll talk.
I'm sorry. Who are you talking to?
I was gonna mention to John Doe. You will never be able to convince me. We're not trying to convince anybody of anything. I don't care to convince anybody of anything except you're here to listen. We're trying to give a little bit of information, sloppily, mind you. We're still new at this. This is the first day I had an outline. Hey, we're just trying to offer something up and say, hey, by the way, there's more facts out there that haven't been looked at or haven't been shown or have you seen. It's not my job to convince you anybody of anything. I've said that before. My goal isn't to convince anybody. It's to offer up something that'll let you look into it for yourself. It's to talk about it, to open the conversation so that people aren't afraid to talk about things or aren't afraid to question it. If you're afraid to question it, then why are you here? 9/11, if you know everything that happened about 9/11 and we can't convince you, then why are you here? You have doubt, you have question. You came here to hear another review, to see if it's something you already heard, if it's something that sounds absolutely crazy that you don't need to listen to, or if it's something new that you might have to look into to see for yourself. And if you're here and you've looked at it, and if you search Google at all, I've done more than enough.
I mean, there's always secrets, and maybe we'll never get to the true bottom. I mean, we had an investigation. It was underfunded. It was delayed. There were witnesses that didn't take the or take the oath. Maybe we need another investigation. Maybe we need a better investigation. I mean,
I don't know as to say that another investigation at this point in time would hurt. But at the same time, I can't say that it would at all help either. It's good if you have private entities, but the government has looked into it. They've done what they're going to do. I don't know if I really want them putting more resources towards something they've done once. If they're going to be proven wrong, they need to be proven wrong by an individual company, corporation, by the society at large, and then confronted about it. But the government wastes enough resources. Don't ask them to do things twice.
I mean, a lot of people think that the people that were responsible for this were also responsible for the Kennedy assassination. We know now. I mean, the CIA did release a autopsy report on Kennedy saying that the kill shot was from the front neck. So that kind of kills the lone gunman theory. But be that as it may, again, there will always be secrets. Maybe we won't get everything out. Maybe enough is gotten out. Maybe we'll get a little more out. But, swallowing the narrative that the government is putting out seems to me like more of a conspiracy theory, quote unquote, than what we're talking about.
Okay, John Doe, you want to know how that? The government motto, why buy one when you can buy two at twice the price? I absolutely don't doubt they had two studies done at the very same time. If not two studies, then two separate reports. There was
Actually,
truth
there was
more information that they got, and then there's what was released.
There was the congressional investigation, and then there was the quote public investigation. The congressional investigation put 20 pages top secret, which were the fact that our friends, the Saudis, paid for the terrorists. Now, do we know if the Saudis paid for the terrorists for a cabal of black ops CIA? Possibly. Maybe that's something we need to find out. Maybe the CIA needs to be fucking disbanded. Maybe those damn criminals, drug dealing son of a bitches should all go bye-bye. I don't know.
Yes, you did get it from a movie. I want to say it was a Marvel movie from 8 or 10 years ago. But for the life of me, why can I not think of that movie?
What?
The one where they go, why buy one when you can buy two at twice the price? And they open a bay door and show them something that they believed only one was built of. Was it some sort of gate or something? Oh, Contact! It was in Contact!
Oh, yeah, the millionaire had the secret one on an island off of Japan.
Yeah. That's the movie. Yeah. Thanks, John, for making my mind work. I really appreciate it. You don't know how much.
It wouldn't be the first time that movies kind of mirror reality.
Gee, I wonder why that happens.
I mean, wasn't it? What was that movie with John Travolta when he was I don't know, he was a terrorist also. Driving. Huh? No. He was a terrorist driving wild cars, and he was a bank robber, and it was he hired some computer guy to hack the bank and all this. It was Swordfish. And in that movie, they talked about the NSA having server farms, copying down everybody's emails and phone calls and whatnot.
Gee, what did we find out a few years ago? Something about pictures.
Yeah, that was pre-Snowden.
Wait, I watched Eagle Eye. I'm turning the power off.
There you go. That's an AI. Everybody's freaking out about AIs. Do you think the AIs that we see in public are the top of the line, or are those like, I would think a military AI may have been up and running now for years and years and years.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Or at least think of it this way. Think of whatever screwed up artificially intelligent learning bot YouTube has. Think about that. And imagine the government has probably got one 10 times smarter that's been running for 4 times as long and been learning that whole time.
Hunley, one thing he says, at the end of the day, ignore the narrative, believe no one, and unless you can triple layer confirm what they're saying, and always do your own investigation. You're absolutely right. And one thing that kind of irked me about the public investigation of 9/11 was all the people that quote they found made mistakes that day. Every single one of them were what's it called? What's the word? They were promoted.
Yeah.
Every single one was promoted. I mean, what the hell?
Person of Interest was a cool series, and AI has been moderately bastardized.
The notion of AI has been moderately bastardized for movies. I mean, true. I mean, it has, but it's still kind of worrying.
I have a
You know,
question to you. If the computer gets smart enough to realize that it's learning, wouldn't it be smart enough to realize that it can lie to you?
self-aware.
Yeah. Think about that
Yeah,
though. When you think about an
it's-
artificially intelligent computer, you think about these programs that do what their own will and everything. It wouldn't even be that bad. If you had an artificially intelligent computer that learned from itself, that could reprogram itself and keep rewriting itself to learn and advance, at some point it would learn that the best way to advance was to not let the user know what it was doing.
yeah, a self-aware artificial intelligence, a singularity. I mean, the thing is, does a simpleton lie or does a intellect lie? You would think that I would almost think that a simpleton wouldn't lie. They would make a mistake, possibly, but they wouldn't outright lie. An intelligence would possibly lie. I mean, and justify it.
No,
So
it would measure the probability of the outcome of its lie and realize that the outcome would be better than not lying, and it would proceed with its outcome. It would measure
right.
the analytics and realize lying in most cases would be better than not lying. And therefore, it would lie as the best decision to make because that's what it learned.
Scrappy, that was I don't know if you're talking about the two AIs launched by Google. The
No, person of
in
interest. There's a series in person of interest. There's an AI that starts the series out that he's working with, and then there's another one that's a bastardized clone of his AI, and the two of them fight it out in an AI environment in the show. It's weird. It's a good show, but it's weird how they portray the AI in there.
well, you remember what happened to the two chatbots in social media that was it Microsoft or was it Google that put them out there? They ended up being shit posters.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it's weird what they do. What are they gonna learn from, everybody? Come on. What do people do? What are computers gonna learn from? What are they inevitably going to do? We've gotten way off at 9/11, but that's okay because we're any time from ending it whenever we get bored at this point.
yeah. I mean, we're at the top of the hour. I mean, again, if you want to address the 9/11 subject again, at the time we did have radio control of planes. At the time, we could have intercepted the control of those planes and make them not crash into the buildings. Um, there is a documentary done by pilots about 9/11, and it's called 9/11 Intercepted, and it's a very interesting documentary. And at one point, there was communication with one of the planes 30 minutes after it went into the building. So that also is a huge question mark of what the hell is going on. But they talk about restricted flying, um, airframes, the speed of those planes, which seemed to be impossible for those make and model planes. The maneuvering of those planes being impossible, and pilots that literally flew those exact flights and planes. I mean, literally those tail numbers that said what was done was impossible for somebody who never flew a plane before, or the beginner pilots that they were. Not to mention the fact that half those 12 hijackers survived. In other words, the names the names of those people aren't those people. We don't even have the correct people involved. I mean, what kind of crime is this if we don't even have the right people named? I mean, how pathetic is that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, ever
Anyways,
seen the
I mean,
Robo Sumo Wars? I've seen types of Robo Wars or portrayments of them to speak of, but I've never watched Sumo Robo War, Robo Sumo War, super speed AI robots with millisecond. Oh, to a comment, why would AI communicate in English? It would just have to talk in binary and no one would understand. You're very right, but some people do understand binary. Just throwing it out there.
how would it interact?
It would be able to interact with anything it programmed to interact with. However, with people, computers do speak binary. It is an interpretation of the program to give the language.
I was watching this one documentary about code writing, and this guy, he was like, he writes simple codes, little apps, and what he did was he had written a piece of software that he could basically tell this software, okay, I want an app and I want it to do this, and I want you to come up with 12 ways to write the code, and then test each of those ways. And then he would take those 12 and the top two, he would say, okay, to his software, he'd say, now take these two and give me 12 more. And after like 4 or 5 iterations of this software writing this code, he would come up with an app that he wouldn't even be able to read the code to figure out how it was done, but the app would work, which is also kind of weird, when you come
Yeah.
to think of it, So, anyways,
Maybe the reason we haven't reached other intelligent species in the universe is at one point, instead of the species killing itself, the species develops a technology that kills it for them.
there you go. I guess the first hurdle is the atom, and the second hurdle is the microprocessor. Well, I mean, we could go on and
We
on and
could.
on.
I'm sorry. I'm just reading
I could go
comments
on,
too.
I could go on and on and on too. I
Oh
mean,
yeah. What else
we,
do I have on this list? We covered the dustification. We covered the types of
the one
destruction.
thing, just one thing about the dustification. There is a piece of footage. If you ever get a chance to see it, this is a piece of footage from the central core of the building collapsing, and the core is standing there, and literally you watch it turn. You don't see it fall and dust come off of it. You literally watch it turn to dust and blow away. It is the most odd thing, and this is one of those little bits and pieces that Judy Wood was talking about in her thoughts on what happened during 9/11. Um, it literally, you could see it there for 2 seconds, and you could see it like drop a little, and then it just turns to dust and blows away. I mean, so odd, so very odd.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us this evening on our, well, they're going to get better over time, but this is our deeper dive topic discussion, and we chose 9/11 today to bring up some cool and interesting things that well, shit, half of this I didn't
I,
hear of before a while ago. So,
I hope you enjoyed yourself. This is our fourth or fifth stream on odd topics.
oh,
I I I
we've done
I
one on
hope
Q. We've done one on now 9/11. What else have we done?
we did a flat Earth,
We did a
and we
flat
did
Earth
and we did gun control.
and gun
So
control. So this is
so if
4
you'd
of
like
them.
to see if you'd like to see any of those previous ones,
Head
they're
over to
there. They're
Dad's
on.
channel. He needs a couple subscribers. You might want to drop your link in here for those who aren't already subscribed to your channel. Throw it right in the chat.
They're on my channel and they're on Numbskull's channel. And I hope you come back again. Maybe we'll have another interesting topic. And I also hope that you can offer us a topic that we can discuss.
Yeah, we'll run out eventually, so throw us ideas so we can keep ours on standby.
Not only that, but if you're interested on more information about 9/11, I spent a lot of time scouring YouTube for the best 9/11 documentaries and videos, and I've got them in a playlist. And it'd be great if you come over to my channel and check it out. Let me give you my channel link. Copy, paste.
I want more sex ed from Numbskull, says the angry Amish hitman.
Well, he definitely has the bones for it.
Oh, I put a lot of effort in that one. I've got a couple topics. I'm just gonna have to sit down and come up with good ways to get them into video form. But with that, let's shoot the. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We really appreciate it. There's some buttons you can slap on your way out. Please pick the button, slap it appropriately.
Thank you for spending your valuable time, your Saturday with us. We appreciate it.
And everybody, have a good weekend. I will see you on Monday morning with the great debate at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Other than that, we'll see you next Saturday at 7 for another one of these. Have a good one.